Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Encourage Mindset. I'm your host, Ethan Vandehei. Alongside me today, I have Dave Gulas. He's going to talk about what we always talk about on this podcast: mindset, motivation, but now more than ever right now, mental health. Welcome to the show, Dave. If you want to give a little bit of a highlight intro about yourself, I would love to learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Ethan. Thanks so much for having me. My name's Dave Gulas. I am president and co-founder of Easy DC 3PL, which is a Kentucky-based third-party logistics company. We provide warehousing, fulfillment, and transportation services for emerging e-commerce brands. We also have another location now in Baltimore, Maryland, and we are just under 2 years old. And that I'm busy growing that company.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. So what's been the biggest thing you've learned over these last 2 years growing this company, Dave?
I think the importance of a personal brand. So when we first started this, I partnered with a good friend of mine from the pharmaceutical industry, and we've both been in the farm industry for the past 20 plus years. And we saw an opportunity within logistics. We had the resources available to capitalize on that, and we went for it. But I noticed a very big difference early on, where the pharma industry we came from was very niche, and you didn't really have to be out there in public building a brand to do well. Everyone knew who the main players were, and like the way the businesses operated, you could do so without having to really build a brand. And when I got into logistics, I quickly realized it's a lot more important for people to be able to find you. So I was never a social media guy or out there public with anything. And I realized that in order to really make this company succeed, I was going to have to do that. So that's been an integral part of our success over the past 2 years, is just me building a personal brand and being out front with the company, so as many people as possible know who I am.
Yeah, I love that you just gave, a little bit of a hidden gem right there. You said, basically, in summary, getting out of your comfort zone. You had to do that. What do you think is something the listeners, should potentially also, maybe hear for advice from you about getting outside of this comfort zone and doing it on a routinely basis?
Yeah, it's going to sound cliche, but growth does not happen within your comfort zone, and it's always going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to feel that fear in terms of when you're doing something new or you're getting outside of what you're accustomed to. But that's really the only way you're going to grow. And oftentimes what you'll find is once you do it, you'll realize that fear and that apprehension and whatever was holding you back was really no big deal. That's really just your mind, your survival-based mind trying to protect you. But when you really follow your goal, go for your goals and follow your heart, you realize too that when you get on the other side of that, that's where all the growth and the good things come.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's an excellent answer. And I think a lot of times we try to live in the fixed mindset, where right now, we're seeing this trend of trying to live more in the growth mindset of things. So Dave, what's something else that you've kind of done throughout maybe the last couple of years, or throughout, just your time of being in the professional setting, to develop a growth mindset?
Yeah, it just goes back to making it a habit to do things that are uncomfortable, or that's almost a sign that's if you want something but something's telling you I don't know how this is going to turn out or whatnot, I just feel that's a sign to go for it. And letting go of the fear of failure too, that's something that holds so many people back. And you realize too that success is just the result of failure after failure after failure. And the more you can get busy going for it and finding out what doesn't work, or what you can learn from a quote unquote failure, that's where you really start to gain knowledge, wisdom, experience, and understand what it's going to take to be successful. So I just think the willingness to do that and not care what other people think, or maybe what it's going to be like to fail, but just to go for it and consistently be able to take that action. I mean, that's what's going to continually propel you forward.
For sure. Yeah, I love that answer. So where did kind of your passion and motivation come from to, take what you've started 2 years ago and, work it into what it is today? Where does, this come from, this drive that you have?
Well, yeah, I've been a lifelong sales professional, so I've always, very early on, I got into sales, and I love the ability to impact your income with your performance, and the personal development aspect of it too. Continually studying that to try to get better at what I do and just be the best version of myself in every area. So I've always had that mindset, and then I knew growing a startup like this was going to be challenging, but I always have that attitude like, yeah, I'll be able to figure it out. And it just turned out to be a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I've really just tried to embrace that and use that as a means to just grow in all these other areas and develop skills that I never even thought I would have had to develop. And it's just been a blast. So I'm just really immersed in that and just trying to continue to grow the company and get better every day.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think everybody wants to get better every day in, like you said, in every single kind of category or bucket of life that we have. And Dave, I know from just previously talking to you, you have 6 kids, and that's another bucket of life that you have. So how do you, maybe not find, the work-life balance, as they say, maybe you do like work-life integration or something like that to make sure you can, balance all these buckets. But what is kind of, been the maybe some advice or some tips for somebody that wants to be an entrepreneur while having a family?
Yeah, well, a couple of things you hit on there. I mean, the whole work-life balance thing, I mean, that's something that's unique to everybody, right? Everyone has different responsibilities, everyone has different careers, different demands on their time. But I think so much of that came from maybe a negative attitude towards work. And maybe for people that weren't in the right career, or they viewed work as like a bad thing, when reality in the entrepreneurial world, most that I talk to love what they do and they enjoy the work. And to really build a successful company, it takes a lot of upfront effort with no guarantee of success. And that of course can be very tough on, the family dynamic. But there's ways too where I love to work and I love what I do, but at the same time, there's a lot of demands on my time. So, my wife and I, we just always are, it's always a work in progress to manage the schedule. And right now we had 5 that are within 5 years. So they're going into 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. So
Wow.
they're all in sports and different activities and, getting into teenagers and all sorts of stuff going on. So, as soon as we finish recording here, I'm headed off to a baseball game. So there's always we always have to find ways to work it in and divide and conquer depending. But again, right, we have a very good family life and strong family dynamic, and it's a busy household, but that's what we want. And all the kids, I think too, I've heard from others that, they're always going to emulate what they see you doing. So it's so important to, have good habits and set a good example and just always be there for them however you can in that moment, depending on what their schedule is and what ours is as well.
Yeah. I want to kind of elaborate more on that. What are some other things that you think as a father, some amazing things to set an example for?
Well, so me personally, I'm very focused on health, and there's always a debate on whether or not people, should have a morning routine. I happen to love my morning routine. I wake up early. I always have a meditation. I go to the gym, I put something positive in my mind, I hydrate heavily, before I start the day, I eat clean, and that's just a way of life for me. So that's something that I found to help me manage all the demands of what business or whatever I'm doing work-wise, as well as the family, demands. Having a proper sleep schedule, even though sometimes you don't always get as much as you want, but, having that in order to. So, I mean, those are things that I do. And I just noticed too, that they translate, the kids want to go work out, the kids want to eat healthy, they're all involved, athletically. So they're always even at home practicing, whether it's baseball or volleyball or whatever they're in. So I just think that, even though I don't have to like preach to them, like I feel like a lot of them pick up good habits, as well as my wife. She's got very good habits. I mean, if there was ever anyone that was meant to do something, I mean, she was meant to be a mom. She goes so hard at just being a good mom. So she's always, hands on, having them equipped with everything they need as well, even though when I'm not there. Right. So, I just think all those things combined have worked out well for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear you, give kudos to everybody in that family. It sounds like you have a great family, and, it's fantastic to, sometimes just learn about that stuff, right? And it's awesome to hear you share all those things. And for me, that's something I want to one day. So Dave, that's awesome. And another question I have for you is, you've been around in the professional world for a while now. You've also obviously are an entrepreneur. So what's been, whether you've learned it in your past roles or from a colleague or something, what's been kind of something that's helped you, stand out, or something that's been really empowering for you, just hearing wise from a colleague or something for to utilize going forward in your professional career?
I just think too, like the biggest thing that I can say is, and I don't know where I necessarily heard this, or this is just something I believe, but it's consistency is so powerful. Just the ability to show up consistently and put the work in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. Oftentimes too, so much of the messaging out in the world today, it focuses on instant gratification, right? And, people are always in a hurry for everything, but oftentimes it's not that way. And you got to put in a lot of consistent discipline activity to achieve anything really remarkable. So just knowing that, understanding that, and realizing it's not like the journey is the journey is everything, right? So often we're focused on the destination when really it's about embracing the journey and having fun along the way, and appreciating what all these challenges and difficulties, how they can transform you and develop your abilities on the way to that destination. So that would be the biggest thing for me, is just to embrace the journey and what it takes to really be successful in whatever you're doing, whether it's building a company, raising a family, I'm building a podcast, anything else, right? All these things take a lot of consistent discipline work, but it's the end result and the accumulation of that really builds something special.
Yeah, no, consistency is a great answer, and it's definitely super hard to do, right? Because we have so many distractions in our life that constantly happen. What are kind of your tips on being consistent, Dave? Because I think everyone wants to learn, the secret sauce to being consistent.
Wow, you hit on a big topic, and obstacle is just distraction, right?
Mhm.
Like, so many distractions coming at us today more than ever in this digital world. And I think the ability to just, focus on less, right? And tune out. Like me personally, I don't, I'm very intentional about the media I consume, about the content I consume, about a schedule. You are what you consume. So really just having that in check in terms of understanding what your goals are, what's going to take to get there, and realizing that all these distractions that are trying to, compete for your time, just to tune out the ones that really aren't worth it and that aren't going to, add value to your life and what you're trying to accomplish. So that would be my biggest thing, is just to take inventory of what you're consuming and what you're spending your time and your focus on, and really get that in check for what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, no, I love that answer, and it's definitely something I need to hear too. Distractions, especially in the social media age, you could scroll endlessly for hours, it seems like sometimes, and that allows you to get down a bad rabbit hole of, losing a lot of time, because time is so valuable these days. Is there something else that our listeners today can really, really put into, their daily habits to make sure they're utilizing their time very valuably? Because, like I said, time is super valuable.
Yeah, I mean, right, everyone's different, and they have a different way of whether it's schedule or career. I mean, me personally, I like to get deep work in early on, so in an ideal day, I get into my office very early, and I have a few hours before any calls are officially on my calendar where I really try to focus on some deep work and accomplish something meaningful and get in that flow state and just really, that's when I'm my most productive. And then even, I still have energy for the rest of the day, but there's no telling what it's going to be, whether it's customer issues, or I may have numerous sales calls, or I'm doing podcasts, or whatever it is. But just allocating that time to high value activity, I found is very powerful.
Do you think sometimes it's beneficial to do like the hardest task of the day first? So then, you feel more energized and more spirited that you did the hard task of the day first, and then you can kind of crank out your easier tasks, or what's kind of, maybe your methodology?
Yeah, that, I mean, if it fits in your schedule and that's doable, for sure. And I find too, just whatever problem or challenge or task you're dealing with, even if it's not anything you can complete like immediately, when you take action towards it, you feel better. So I guess I would just say default to action. And so often, you can get anxiety or overwhelmed by looking at too many things to do, or trying to decide what to do. But if anything, I would just say have a bias for action and start accomplishing something, whatever that looks like, and continue to move forward and to take decisive action. That would be my advice there.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any other things for advice? As I want to be an entrepreneur one day, and I feel like there's some things I'm really passionate about, and it's kind of hard to view if that's going to be a business opportunity or not. So how do you realistically know, like, hey, this is something, you should take a shot on and give it its full effort?
Well, yeah, I would tell, like, younger folks especially, like, just try things, just get out there. And it doesn't mean you have to build a business or make a career out of it, but if you have an itch to do something, or something intrigues you and you think there might be something there, I would just follow that and try things. And if it's not for you, you can figure that out. But great example too, I had the idea one day. I never thought I would ever start a podcast. And one day I had the idea, and it came to me clear as day, like, this, you should really do this. And I just harnessed that momentum, and I took action right away. And now we've I think we've dropped 46 episodes. We're dropping twice a week now.
Nice.
Numerous more books. And it's just been invaluable for the business, and my network, and the relationships I've built, and it's a lot of fun. And I just got invited to present at a marketing conference on how to start a podcast, which crazy. We just started this thing not long ago, and it's really it's really taken on a life of its own. So and again, right, I'm 45 years old right now, so it's not like it's ever too late to start something. Right. So especially if you're young and you want to figure out what you should do with your life, or what you're interested in, or what path to go down, I would just say try things, because that's really where you're going to find things out, and get out there and see what you can do, and what you enjoy, and what's the right path for you.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. And, we've also talked a little bit about goals on today's show. And what do you kind of say to people, and maybe sometimes even tell yourself, because you're never going to accomplish every goal you set out there. Let's be realistic, right? That's totally, you're lying to yourself if you tell yourself you accomplished every goal. But when we suffered these setbacks, because I don't want to say we called it a failure, I'd call it a setback, because you still want to achieve that goal. What do you do to sustain self-motivation when you suffer that setback, so you're not, losing yourself, and making sure you can still keep your head on high and make sure you can achieve that goal one day?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I come from sales, so I'm used to cold calling. I'm used to
Yeah.
numb to rejection. So, I mean, for me, maybe it's a little easier, but I just understand that that's the price of achieving something great, right? It's not going to be easy. You're going to face challenges. You're going to face setbacks. And just to really, I think the most important thing is to have that that intention of what you want to accomplish, to go for it, to start. And as you encounter challenges and obstacles, course correct, of course, but just realize too, you're still making progress. Even if you suffer a setback, what did you learn from that? How can you do it better next time? How can you, again, you have to get the reps in to get better at whatever you're doing. So just understanding that whole process and really taking the long view of it and realizing that even if you're facing short-term setbacks, ultimately, if you keep going, you can reach it. And, just always having that positive mindset and being able to encourage yourself in that process. I mean, that's probably the most important thing, is that inner conversation that we all have. You really have to have your mind going in the right direction and be able to sustain those setbacks, especially like with what I'm doing, building a startup, and a lot of the other entrepreneurs that I talk to out there, especially that's the biggest thing too I've learned from my podcast. The very, very successful people, they all have stories of setbacks, of failures, of how hard it was. And I mean, some of the stories they have are just incredible. But I mean, those, you're rarely going to find someone that built something great that didn't go through, a lot of hardship. So just understanding that and embracing that part of the journey.
For sure. Yeah. And if you want to share, you're totally welcome to. What's been kind of, like you said, everyone has a story of their setbacks. What's kind of maybe been your setback story?
Yeah. I mean, just, I think the biggest thing is like when I really thought growing this company was going to be a lot easier than it was. And I think after like 6 months, we had like 2 customers, and I was really questioning like, how am I going to do this? And that's when I really went full speed on building the personal brand and really getting out there, and not, again, not even knowing how to even do it, just realizing I have to figure this out and looking for the information and taking action. Yeah. And, done a lot on LinkedIn, and then building the podcast too. So just really, I mean, I think it really woke me up that I'm going to have to develop a whole new skill set to really, get this company where we need it to be, and just embracing that. And so I think very early on, just not having the success I thought I would, and using that as fuel to develop all these other skills, I think was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I love that we started the podcast when you brought that up, and we're kind of ending the podcast with that. So I love that you view personal branding as truly a valuable asset. I do too. And Dave, it's been fun to have you on the show. And my final question for you is, for our younger professional audience, there's always, people want to hear, something that you were told as bits and pieces of wisdom, but you are a sales guy. Personally, I think sales is in everything we do. We just don't really see that all the time. What's been, maybe something you've gotten to take away from being in sales, or something, you have just kind of heard from or read about that you think is like the best sales tip or, technique that you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, I would say too, again, sales, I think for any young professional deciding what they want to do, sales is an excellent skill to build, because especially if you want to be in business and the economic environment we're in now, being able to impact revenue, whatever capacity you're in, is a valuable skill. So sales is certainly something that people value. And in terms of, I would say another lesson I've learned too, with being a startup founder and being out there publicly, is just so many people do it the wrong way, just in terms of like pitch slapping you on LinkedIn. Like as soon as you connect, they're spamming you with stuff and all this other stuff, just really to make a sale. When I think if you approach it from the standpoint of you're there to help people solve their problems, and your solution may or may not do that, but to take in the more exploratory approach of getting to know someone and building a relationship and really seeing what their situation is, and if your product or service is the right fit. And if it is, oftentimes if you're doing things right and you have a good solution and you've done your job, I mean, that business will consummate naturally. So I would just say, take it from the standpoint of that, of really. And again, if you're not getting the sales you need to really look around for the right people that you can help, versus just trying to, jam your solution down, in front of everybody, just trying to, spray and pray, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dave. It's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more and hear about your mindset and motivation, learn some more about your family and also about your business.
Thanks, Ethan. Thank you so much.
So if you're ready to grow, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and let's build a mindset that empowers and transforms.